Keanu Reeves stood quietly at the coffee shop counter, his weathered necklace dangling modestly against his faded jacket, a stark contrast to the polished LA crowd around him. Tara, the sharp-tongued barista, eyed it with a sneer, her biting sarcasm ready to cut deep. But what erupted next wasn't just a clash of words. It was a raw unraveling of heartbreak that silenced the shop and ignited a chain reaction no one could predict, forever changing one life in ways unimaginable. Before we plunge into this gripping tale, drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? If you're hooked on stories that twist your heart and mind, hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow, we've got another jaw-dropping story waiting just for you. The Los Angeles coffee shop pulsed with the frenetic energy of the morning rush on a biting December day in 2025. The rich aroma of roasted beans clashed with the icy draft sneaking through the cracked open door, while sunlight stabbed through the wide windows, bouncing off polished tables in blinding shards. Tara, a 26-year-old barista with a tongue like a whip and a wit that could draw blood, ruled the counter with a stained green apron slung over her shoulders. She thrived in the chaos, snapping orders into the register, trading jabs with regulars, and hurling sarcastic barbs that kept the line in check. But today, her hawkish gaze snagged on something, or someone, that lit a spark of mischief in her chest. A man shuffled up to order, a drab figure lost in the sea of LA's polished crowd, a faded black jacket hanging off his frame, dark jeans scuffed at the knees, a baseball cap pulled low like a shield over his face. His hands fumbled, slow and deliberate, as he tugged a wad of crumpled bills from his pocket. But what really caught Tara's eye was the silver cross necklace swinging against his chest, an ugly, scratched-up relic, its chain tarnished and dull. It was a laughable outlier among the sleek designer chains and minimalist pendants the city's elite flaunted. Her lips curled into a predatory smirk, easy prey. "Grande black coffee," he muttered, his voice a low rumble, nearly swallowed by the espresso machine's hiss. Tara jabbed the order into the register, her eyes slicing back to the necklace like a vulture circling a corpse. "Nice bling," she sneered, her voice thick with venomous glee. "What, you dig that out of a dumpster? Looks like it's been dragged through hell, sticks out like a sore thumb in this Hollywood crowd." The shop's chatter dipped, a few heads swiveling toward the brewing storm. The man froze, his fingers grazing the cross as if it burned, but he didn't recoil. He slid the crumpled bills across the counter, his face still shadowed by the cap. "It's special to me," he said, his tone steady but soft, a quiet defiance threading through it. Tara barked a laugh, cold and cutting, her eyes rolling so hard they nearly disappeared. "Special?" she mocked, snatching the money with a flick of her wrist. "Yeah, special like a museum fossil. That thing's so ancient it's probably cursed, bringing bad vibes to my counter. What's next? You gonna rock a mullet and bell-bottoms to complete the time warp look?" She leaned in, elbows digging into the counter, her smirk a taunting dare. "Come on, man, this is LA. Ditch the junk and level up." He lifted his head, and the sunlight sliced across his features. A shockwave of recognition crashed through the shop. Keanu Reeves, the Keanu Reeves, Hollywood's enigma, action icon, the man who dodged scandal like bullets. Tara, blind to the shift, kept her smug grin plastered on, oblivious to the gasps rippling behind her. Keanu's dark eyes locked onto hers, deep and unyielding, a faint, dangerous smile tugging at his lips. "It belonged to someone I loved," he said, his voice slicing through the noise like a guillotine, soft but lethal. She gave it to me. The words dropped like a bomb, heavy and unmovable. Tara blinked, her smirk cracking as the weight slammed into her. The line behind Keanu went rigid, customers trading stunned glances. A woman in yoga pants hissed under her breath, "Oh my God, is that him?" A guy with a laptop fumbled for his phone, aiming it with shaky hands. Tara's bravado teetered, her pulse spiking as the room tilted. Pride roared in her chest, clawing to hold ground. Right," she sputtered, shoving his coffee across the counter with too much force. "Didn't mean to. Whatever." Keanu shook his head, a gentle rebuke in the gesture. "It's fine. You couldn't know." He grabbed the cup, his fingers brushing it briefly, then turned toward a corner table, leaving the shop crackling with tension and Tara drowning in the wreckage of her own words. Tara stood frozen behind the counter, her palms slick against the chipped wood edge she gripped like a lifeline. The quip had slipped out effortlessly, a barbed dart meant to slice through the monotony of the morning rush. But now it hung in the air, a misfired shot that pierced something she hadn't aimed for. Keanu Reeves wasn't just some scruffy stranger in a faded jacket. He was a living legend, a name whispered in reverence, and she'd sneered at something he held dear. Her stomach churned, a sour knot tightening as the weight of her words settled. She'd crossed a line she hadn't even seen. Mike, her gangly co-worker with a tangle of curls and a grin too wide for the moment, slid up beside her. "You just roasted Keanu Reeves, Tara," he said, voice buzzing with glee. "That's like next-level legendary. You've got balls." "Shut it," she snapped, her voice cracking as heat flooded her cheeks. She attacked the counter with a rag, scrubbing at invisible stains, desperate to dodge the curious stares prickling her skin from the line. But her eyes betrayed her, darting to Keanu where he sat by the window, alone in the gray wash of December light. The silver cross glinted faintly against his jacket, not just old, but weathered with intent, like a talisman forged in battle. She'd read it all wrong, pegged it as tacky when it was anything but. At his table, Keanu cradled his coffee, the steam curling upward like ghosts he couldn't shake. His gaze drifted beyond the glass, lost in a fog thicker than the LA morning. That necklace wasn't some thrift store trinket. It was Jennifer's, Jennifer Syme, the woman who'd once been his everything. He could still feel the rain-slick night in 1998 when she'd fastened it around his neck, her fingers brushing his skin with a tenderness that seared into his memory. "It's not fancy," she'd said, her voice a playful lilt laced with love. "But it's me. Keep it close, okay?" He'd nodded, a quiet promise, blind to the cruel prophecy those words would become. Jennifer had been his sun, wild and bright, a spirit who danced through his shadowed world. They'd collided at a party, her laughter a lifeline pulling him from the abyss. She'd woven dreams into his quiet chaos, a little house with a creaky porch, a family, a mutt tearing through the grass with a stick in its jaws. They'd named their future daughter Ava, a whispered hope, until 1999, when Ava arrived stillborn, her tiny body stealing their breath and breaking their hearts. The nursery stayed empty, a silent wound. Then, in 2001, fate twisted the knife deeper. Jennifer's car spun out on a rain-soaked road, metal crumpling, and she was gone. Keanu had stood at her grave, rain mingling with tears, the cross against his chest, the only piece of her he could still hold. It was his anchor now, a shard of her warmth he clutched when the silence screamed too loud. Back at the counter, Tara's unease clawed deeper, a cold sweat prickling her spine. She wasn't cruel, just reckless, a sharpshooter with no aim. She'd sized him up as another LA fraud, a poser drowning in the city's shallow gleam, not a man hauling ghosts heavier than she could fathom. Her fingers tightened on the rag, knuckles whitening. Mike nudged her again, his grin fading as he caught her expression. "You gonna apologize? You hit something raw there. Look at him." "I don't know," she muttered, her voice a rasp as her eyes flicked to Keanu. He didn't even flinch. "He's Keanu," Mike said, shrugging, though his tone sobered. "Guy's a saint. Doesn't mean you didn't gut him." Her gut twisted tighter, a coil of guilt and dread. Apologizing felt like defeat. Her pride bristled at the thought, but those eyes, dark and endless, lingered in her mind like a bruise. She snatched the rag and edged toward the tables, steps faltering, heart thudding against her ribs. Her mind raced, scrambling for words to undo the damage, but every rehearsed line felt hollow against the sorrow she'd unwittingly stirred. Tara edged toward Keanu's table, her rag scraping at a pristine surface like she could scrub away her earlier words. He looked up, his gaze a quiet anchor that pinned her in place, stripping her bravado bare. The silence stretched tight, a wire ready to snap. She cleared her throat, the sound rough against the hum of the shop, and clutched the rag until her knuckles ached. "Hey, sorry about earlier," she stammered, forcing the words out. "The necklace thing. I didn't mean to be a total jerk." Keanu's face softened, a flicker of surprise softening the edges of his steady calm. "It's okay," he said, voice warm but laced with a guarded undertone, like a man used to shielding wounds. "I've taken harder punches." She shifted her weight, eyes darting to the cross dangling against his chest, dull, scratched, a blemish in the polished LA light. "You said it was from someone you loved," she said, softer now. "I shouldn't have ripped on it." He nodded, fingers brushing the silver with a reverence that made her chest tighten. "It was Jennifer's," he said, the name slipping out like a breath he'd held too long. "My girlfriend. She gave it to me years ago." Tara's breath snagged. Jennifer reverberated in her mind. Half-remembered tabloid shadows, whispers of tragedy, Keanu's unspoken scars. She parted her lips to speak, but he pressed on, his gaze drifting to the window where the gray morning pressed against the glass. "We were together a lifetime ago. She was everything. Funny as hell, fierce, real in a way most people fake. This," he tapped the cross, "was hers. Just a little thing she thought I'd keep. She knew me better than I knew myself." The shop's chatter dulled to a hush. Tara stood rooted, the rag sagging in her hand. Nearby, a man in a crisp suit folded his newspaper with a rustle, ears tilted toward them. A young woman with a sketchbook froze, pencil trembling above the page, her eyes wide. "She's gone now," Keanu murmured, voice so low it barely carried. "Car accident. 2001. This is what's left. Not the wreckage, not the grief. Just her." Tara swallowed, her throat a vice. "I'm so sorry," she managed, the words clumsy, tripping over themselves. "I didn't know." Keanu's eyes met hers, piercing yet gentle, a paradox that unsettled her. "No one does unless I let them," he said. "It's not on you." She nodded, but her pride flared, restless and defiant, refusing to let it end on his grace alone. "Still, I shouldn't have said it. But why keep something so beat up? You're Keanu Reeves. You could get something new, something that doesn't look like it's one snag from breaking. Isn't that what people expect?" The question sliced the air, sharper than she'd meant, laced with a challenge she couldn't reel back. Keanu's brow creased, a rare fracture in his composure. "Shinier doesn't mean better," he said, voice hardening. "This is her. A new one wouldn't carry her soul." Tara bristled, her defenses surging. "Yeah, but it's just a thing, right? Memories don't need to look like trash someone else threw out. You don't have to wear your pain for the world to gawk at." The air thickened, electric with tension. Keanu's jaw tightened, fingers curling around the cross like it might shatter. "It's not trash," he said, low and sharp, an edge cutting through his calm. "It's a piece of her, someone I lost. You don't toss that out because it's worn or because people stare." The rebuke stung like a slap. Tara recoiled, heat flooding her face. "I didn't mean it like that," she muttered. But the words rang hollow, the damage etched in the flicker of hurt shadowing his eyes. He lifted his coffee, sipping it like a shield, shutting her out. She retreated to the counter, pulse hammering, the clash unresolved. A wound reopened and a question lingering. Was holding on strength or just stubborn ruin? The coffee shop thrummed back to life, a restless buzz of voices and clinking cups. But Tara stood trapped in the echo of her own misstep. She'd apologized, sort of, but her stubborn pushback had fanned a smoldering tension into something jagged and alive. Keanu wasn't angry, not in the way most people flared. He didn't shout or sneer, but she'd struck a nerve, a deep, hidden vein, and the ache of it gnawed at her like a splinter she couldn't dig out. Mike caught her unease, his smirk sharp, as he frothed milk with a hiss. "Round 2 was a bust, huh? You're batting 0 today." "Shut up," she snarled, slamming a ceramic cup onto the counter with a crack that drew a few startled glances. Her eyes flicked to Keanu, still seated by the window, the tarnished cross catching the dull light like a faint SOS. Her own words looped in her skull. Memories don't need to look like trash. She'd meant to bridge the gap, to soften her earlier barb, but it had landed like a brick through glass. Now she felt like the asshole twice over, her chest tight with a guilt she didn't know how to name. At his table, Keanu traced the cross with a fingertip, the motion slow and deliberate, as if coaxing a fading pulse. His thoughts spiraled, dark and heavy, dragged back to Tara's question, a question he'd faced before, from friends, from strangers, from his own fractured reflection. Why cling to relics? The worn wallet, the scratched necklace, the memories that cut deeper with every year. It wasn't about the thing. It was Jennifer. That rainy night in '98 burned vivid. Her laugh, bright and unguarded, as she fastened the chain around his neck, her fingers lingering against his skin. The way she'd tucked a damp strand of hair behind her ear, grinning like she'd just handed him the world. They dreamed big. Marriage under an oak tree, kids with her eyes, a quiet life with a dog bounding through the yard. Ava's stillbirth in '99 had shattered that vision, her tiny casket a weight that never lifted. Then Jennifer's crash in 2001 buried him alive, the cross her final whisper, a lifeline he gripped through the endless dark. Back at the counter, Tara's unease metastasized, a restless itch she couldn't scratch. Guilt wasn't her game. Sarcasm was her shield, her way of keeping the world at arm's length. But Keanu's quiet strength unraveled her. It wasn't just his fame. It was the way he carried that broken thing like a vow. She snatched a tray, knuckles white, and marched back to his table, her voice cutting through the din. "Hey," she said, loud enough to turn heads. "I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean it's trash. I just don't get it. Why hold on to something so old when you could have anything you want? Keanu's head snapped up, surprise flashing across his face at her tenacity. "It's not about what I could have," he said, voice steady but raw, like a wound freshly torn. "It's about what I had. Jennifer wasn't replaceable, this isn't either." Tara's brow furrowed, frustration boiling over. "But it's falling apart!" she shot back, her tone rising, sharp and reckless. "You're Keanu Reeves, money, fame, the whole damn world at your feet. Why cling to something that looks like it's gonna snap any second?" The shop went deathly still. Keanu's eyes darkened, a storm roiling beneath his calm, lightning flickering in their depths. "Because it's already broken," he said, voice low and lethal, each word a blade. "Like she was. Like I was. You don't toss out what's broken. You hold it closer, even when it cuts." The words slammed into Tara like a fist, stealing her breath. The tray trembled in her hands, rattling faintly. Gasps rippled through the shop. A man's spoon clattered to the floor. A woman's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide with shock. Keanu's composure fractured, revealing a jagged, furious edge she hadn't seen coming. He shoved his chair back, the scrape a gunshot in the silence, and snatched his coffee. "Thanks for the drink," he said, voice flat as steel, and strode for the door. Tara's heart plummeted, a cold, sinking stone. She'd pushed too far, and now he was gone. The bell's chime a mocking farewell. The shop sat stunned, a vacuum of sound in his wake, her pulse roaring as the weight of her words crashed down. The door slammed shut behind Keanu, and the coffee shop detonated into a flurry of whispers, a hive kicked awake. Tara stood paralyzed, the tray slipping from her trembling hands to crash onto a table with a jarring clatter. Mike bolted over, eyes bulging like he'd witnessed a car wreck. "What the hell, Tara? You just chased Keanu Reeves out the damn door!" "I didn't mean to," she barked, her voice splintering, raw and unsteady. "I was trying to fix it, okay?" "Fix it?" Mike's laugh was sharp, bitter, cutting through the rising din. "You pretty much told him his dead girlfriend's necklace is garbage. Real smooth genius." Tara's stomach lurched, bile rising as his words sank in. She darted a glance at Keanu's table. The empty cup sat like a gravestone, his presence a fading specter. The shop pulsed with frenzied chatter, phones flashing, snippets already ricocheting across social media. "Barista versus Keanu, necklace meltdown!" Her intent had been to understand, to mend the rift, but her bullheadedness had torched it instead. She pressed a hand to her chest, breaths shallow, the weight of her screw-up suffocating her. Outside, Keanu slumped against the brick wall, the December chill gnawing at his skin. He clutched the cross, its edges biting into his palm, his breaths jagged and uneven. Tara's words seared, not their venom, but their truth, echoing the doubts that haunted his sleepless nights. Did clinging to Jennifer's memory chain him to a past he couldn't escape? Letting go felt like treason, a betrayal of the woman who'd been his anchor. He exhaled sharply, the cross warm against his cold hand, and a resolve clicked into place. A decision that would shift everything. Hours later, the shop had settled into a muted hum, the afternoon crowd thinning. Tara wiped the counter in a daze, her movements mechanical, when the bell jingled with a sharp, insistent chime. She snapped her head up and froze, heart slamming against her ribs. Keanu stood there, cap pulled low, a small black box gripped in his hand. The few remaining customers gaped, whispers igniting like sparks. He crossed the floor with purpose, his expression a cipher, unreadable and magnetic. Tara, right? He said, voice calm but resonant, slicing through the tension. She nodded, throat dry, bracing for a storm. Yeah. Look, I'm so sorry. He raised a hand, silencing her mid-breath. Don't. I overreacted. You didn't know. He slid the box across the counter, its edges catching the light. This is for you. Her brow creased, confusion swirling. What? Open it, he said, stepping back, his eyes locked on hers with quiet intensity. Tara hesitated, fingers trembling as she lifted the lid. Inside gleamed a silver necklace, not a cross, but a teardrop pendant, pristine and radiant, a stark contrast to his battered relic. A note nestled beside it. For your own memories, Kay. She stared, mind reeling. I don't get it. Keanu's lips twitched, a faint, electric smile. You're right, things break. Memories don't have to. I got this because everyone carries something. Keep it, toss it, your choice. Her throat locked, a lump rising. But why? You jolted me awake, he said, voice softening, a crack of vulnerability slipping through. Jennifer wouldn't want me caged in yesterday. She'd want me alive. Maybe this, he touched his cross, a final tether, is enough. Before she could gasp a reply, he turned and strode out, the bells chime a gunshot in the silence. Tara stood rooted, the pendant icy in her palm, pulse racing. Then the real shock hit. Mike burst from the back, phone thrust out, voice shrill. Tara, holy crap, look at this! A news alert blazed across the screen. Keanu Reeves donates $1 million to grief counseling charity in Jennifer Syme's name. The story quoted a source. A coffee shop spat flipped a switch. He's letting her rest, helping others heal. Tara's jaw dropped, the pendant slipping through her fingers to clink against the counter. Her clash hadn't just rattled her. It had ignited $1 million ripple. Tears stung as the shop erupted, awe and disbelief crashing around her. From her reckless tongue, a seismic legacy had exploded into being. As the coffee shop settled into stunned silence, Tara clutched the teardrop pendant, a symbol of a truth she'd stumbled into. What we carry, broken or bright, defines us more than what we discard. Keanu's cross wasn't just metal. It was a testament to love's endurance, a reminder that healing doesn't mean erasing the past, but honoring it enough to step forward. In life, we all wield words that can wound or spark change, sometimes both. And Tara's clash with Keanu teaches us to pause, to see the weight behind what seems worn or small. Thank you, readers, for diving into this journey with us, for feeling every sting and twist. If this tale moved you, hit that follow button. We've got more stories brewing, each one a chance to reflect, connect, and grow. Stay with us for the ride.